Sasha White, thanks ever so much for joining us and for agreeing to talk us through your role on Middlesex's board. The latest in our series of interviews. Sasha, you were appointed to the board last June. You joined with two other directors at a time when the club were really looking to diversify the skills on that board. As someone that's got a huge passion for playing and also watching the game, how much are you now enjoying the challenge of being in governance?
I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. It's been absolutely brilliant. I mean, to be at the coalface of learning about a club I've cared about for a long time, to be making decisions about the club, to be trying to do my little bit to improve the club at all aspects and all levels. It's actually, I haven't done anything in my professional career I've enjoyed more, frankly.
Exceptional. For those members who aren't familiar with your background, Sasha, you're a QC who specialises in planning. You've appeared in the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court. You've led many high-profile public inquiries. I guess the obvious question is that the role of a Middlesex board director is voluntary. How do you find time to balance those work commitments with the requirements of the board?
I think that's just organisation. I'm incredibly efficient and I really try and manage my time effectively. I mean, my wife would probably say I don't have enough downtime, and that's probably a fair criticism, but I just try and be as organised as I can. And I think I'm helped by the fact I've always been self-employed, so I've had to kind of self-govern my time, my effort, my energy.
What's been really clear, Sasha, from conducting these interviews with your colleagues and fellow board directors is that there's an obvious breadth of knowledge and experience that exists across that board now. What are the specific skills you bring, and then what experience do you bring from your own legal background?
Well, I think in the kind of roundest way, I've got 30 years now in the law, where I do practice in a relatively specialist area, but obviously the principles, the fundamental principles of English law are ingrained in my psyche, unfortunately. Hopefully I'll jettison them one day, but at the moment the principles are very clear to me. And through my day-to-day job, obviously people come to me and pay me a reasonable living to solve problems, and I constantly am provided with evidence, facts, and I've got to decide how to get to a destination, usually in the most appropriate and strategically sensible way. And I think I can apply those skills in the same way by the transference of knowledge to the work I do on the board.
Indeed. Away from all that, you mentioned you're short of time, or your wife certainly feels you are. I know you're an avid Arsenal supporter, huge cricket fan, with an alliance to Kent. We won't hold that against you. But what was the journey that led you to Middlesex's board?
Well, I've been involved in cricket as an administrator since 2005. We had a house in Swiss Cottage, and my son got to that age. I grew up in the country. Well, I went to boarding school, but I actually grew up in Knightsbridge, and I used to go to Lords as my home ground. But I started to get back into cricket in 2006. I took a role with Primrose Hill. I ran a team there for 5 years. We then moved to Oxfordshire. I ran teams at my local cricket club, and I also managed the Oxfordshire under-13s for a number of years. So I've kept my hand in both playing and off the field administrative roles. And I was asked by Richard a year ago if I'd be interested in being a director, and I loved the thought of being up for interview. I went for the interview, and luckily I managed to persuade the interview board that I would bring an appropriate personality and skills to the board.
Excellent. Those skills and qualities you mentioned qualify you perfectly, I guess, to chair the club's Legal, Ethics and Governance Committee. Can you explain to those watching what that committee is responsible for, and what have you been focusing on since that committee was established?
Yes, I mean, our fundamental view and approach is oversight of the club. It's, as said, we've obviously got the formal and the informal. The formal, to ensure we comply with ECB regulations and requirements. Obviously, the wider law of England and Wales we've got to comply with. And then the informal, we take it very seriously to establish the highest possible standards of behaviour, both on and off the field. And we also expect and hope that our members will also act in the same way. So really, it's oversight throughout the club to ensure that Middlesex represents the brand appropriately in the best possible way and to a standard of morality and ethics which reflects well on all of us.
Sasha, the current COVID pandemic has posed an enormous amount of challenges for the club across the board. Has it had any real specific impact on the areas of the club that your committee looks after?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. I mean, we've all, I mean, particularly, and I would say this, the staff have been absolutely unbelievable, and we've had to make sure that effectively people are working in a way which is compatible with their well-being. We obviously want to make sure that the requirements of the staff are not overburdened. And generally, I think actually we've taken the opportunity during the pandemic to really look at what the role of staff and members should be. And actually one of the things that I must say that's been incredible has been the contact with members. And particularly, I've spoken to about 20 members, and that's been one of the, actually, I'd say it's been my best experience in the lockdown. The love, affection of members to our club has just been so emphasised to me.
We're extremely fortunate for that. Sasha, a year on from joining the board, what's changed in that year, and has it lived up to the expectations you had when you started on the journey?
It's unquestionably surpassed it. I mean, I've loved every minute. I think in the past year, what I would say, and to give the members a reassurance, I think the board has a range and depth and quality of skills which is really special. And not just that, our chair and chief executive encourage and allow the clearest expression of views. So we have a very dynamic, transparent and challenging group of directors now, and I think people should take comfort that all issues are really dealt with and people are allowed to take on all sorts of positions. And I can't think of a committee I've been part of in my professional life which has had those qualities in a greater depth than we do now.
That's great to hear. Focus on the areas of governance and ethics and legal issues, Sasha. What do you see as the challenges for Middlesex Cricket moving forward in the coming months?
Well, I think obviously the ECB is seriously applying their mind to, I think they're being more interventionist, and there are serious challenges in order to ensure compliance, that we retain obviously our first class status, that we comply with all the regulatory requirements of the ECB. But again, in terms of soft roles, I think the Black Lives Matter movement this year has shown that I think one of the real challenges facing Middlesex is we have a desire, and not just a desire because that's an expression of intent, but a real requirement to ensure that Middlesex is a place that welcomes all, whatever their background. I think Middlesex in its DNA has been an environment of welcome and embracing of people from every single background. And I think over the next 6 months, the board really takes seriously to ensure that we are an exemplar of diversity and equality.
Sasha, that's great. Look, I'm going to pass off now and say thanks ever so much for your time. It's been really appreciated. I'm sure the members have taken a lot from this interview. I guess like the rest of the board, you're looking forward to getting back out there and watching some cricket and saying hello to some members now that they can put a face to the name.
Absolutely. And I always say, and I mean this truly, and I've said this in all my members' calls, I'm very happy for anyone to approach me and talk about the club and what they want and what they don't want. So do feel free to come and see me if you see me in the pavilion or anywhere else at Lords or Radlett or Uxbridge or Richmond or wherever else we may be playing. And can I thank you, Fletch, for taking the time to ask me these questions.
Sasha, that's my pleasure. Look, thanks ever so much for your time, and God willing, we'll be back out there soon.
Hopefully.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.